Hello everybody, it is Micah again, this time coming at you with a video on a subject I've actually been asked about quite a few times, my HUD. Particularly, how I keep my HUD so clean, since some of you have noticed in my videos that I generally have very few elements actually displayed. So I'm going to cover as much as I can about my HUD, including the basics for those super new players, and some more advanced tricks that you may not know about even if you've been playing this game for a while. One thing you should know beforehand though is I am a PC player, so things might be slightly different for consoles, but I'm going to try to keep this basic enough that even if you are a console player, you should be able to follow along just fine. So with that, let us begin. When you first create your character, you're going to have a very basic interface, and before you start moving everything around, there's a couple of things you should do first. Go to your main menu, which is this bubble menu on your screen, go all the way to the right and select System, then select Character Configuration. Here we're going to start at the top and work our way down. So the first thing you want to select is the Items Settings button, and there's two things you want to look at here, the Inventory interface and the Retainer Inventory interface. By default, these are set to normal. And when you open your inventory up, you're going to get this little tiny box with a bunch of tabs, which is an absolute nightmare for inventory management. So instead, you want to change this setting to open all, click apply, and now when you open up your inventory, all the tabs are going to display at once, with only the key items and the crystals set into their own tab. This is glorious, and it's going to make dealing with your inventory so much easier. Now you want to go down to your UI settings. Here there's three subcategories: General, HUD, and Party List. Under the General tab, you want to go down to where you see Display, Action, Help. This will determine where your tooltips are displayed, and by default they are set next to cursor, which will display all your tooltips, obviously, next to your cursor. If you change this to fixed, it will display your tooltips in a fixed position on your screen. Fixed reversed will display them in a fixed position, but flip that position to the other side of the screen depending on where your pointer is. I keep this at fixed, but really it's whatever you prefer. The reason you want to change it now though is because if you do want it to be in a fixed position, you will not have the option to place it wherever you want to in the HUD layout if this option is just set to the default of next to cursor. Under the HUD subtab, there's very little to do right now. Perhaps maybe change the clock to display the times you prefer, AORC and local or server, but there is one thing you want to make sure you do, and that's to go all the way to the bottom and here where it says display target's remaining HP percentage. You want to turn this on. This will display the target's HP in a percent next to their name in the target bar, and this is super duper handy. If you watch some of my walkthrough videos, you will know that I sometimes say, this boss will do this move at this percent. Well, this is how you know what percent that boss is at, taking a lot of guesswork out of it. Now you want to go down to the hotbar settings. All you really want to do here is to make sure all the hotbars are turned on. Even if you don't think you're going to use them, turn them on. We're going to come back here later to make a few other adjustments, but for now, that's all you need to do. Finally, go down to the log window settings. Here you can adjust your chat log's color, what information's displayed in each tab. You can turn on or off timestamps, text size, notification sounds, pretty much anything that has to do with the chat box. I also like to turn off the profanity filter because I'm a big boy, I can handle the language, and display altitude error message, which gets rid of that big annoying error message that appears on your screen when you fly too high. And with that, we're done in the character configuration menu, and we can finally start with your HUD. And the chat log is actually where we will begin, since that is a separate element from the rest of the HUD for some strange reason. The chat log you can also adjust from your main screen. There is no need to open any special tab or anything to change it or move it around. Instead, you simply want to hover your mouse or your virtual mouse if you're on console over the General tab, grab onto it and hold it, and then just move it wherever you want it to be. If you want to resize it, you just simply move your pointer to the upper right-hand corner and grab onto this little triangle. This allows you to resize it horizontally or vertically in any way you want. There's also by default 3 tabs, one for general information, one for battle information, and one for event information. There's also the option to create a 4th, and all of these can be customized in the log window settings in the character configuration menu that we just covered. If you want to separate one of these tabs like I have here, simply grab onto it with your pointer and pull it out of your main chat window. Move it around, resize it however you want, and you're done. If you want to combine them back again, simply grab it and drag it back to your main window. I like having a separate chat box just for free company, party, and whatnot chatter, just because I've missed questions, I've missed people saying hello and whatnot. So yeah, just having a box just for chat in and of itself, I find super helpful. Now let's move on to the rest of your actual HUD. So to adjust everything else, you want to go back to your main menu, back to System, and this time select HUD Layout. This will outline all the different elements in a white border and overlay a grid on top of your screen. If the name of an element is in purple, that means it's shut off. If the name is in white, that element is turned on. If it has an inner glow, that means that element is currently the one you have selected. You're also going to see this box appear, and this box has 3 parts. First are these numbered tabs, and these tabs are your saved layouts, so you can have 4 completely different layouts saved to your system. I know some people like to have different layouts depending on what they're doing, and this is where you would set those. So if you want one layout for healing and one layout for tanking, you do that here. If you want one layout for raiding, one layout for role-playing, you do that here. If you're like me and you just have one layout for everything, but you may want to try something a little bit different, you can do that here too without losing your original layout. The 4 options below, basic, system, hotbars, and duty, are pretty worthless. You can just ignore these. All they do is toggle between certain elements of your HUD, but in basic, you have access to them all. So just leave it on basic and ignore the rest. Then you have current UI element. And this is the option that you're going to use more than anything else on this screen. Here you can change each element to fit your certain needs. When you have an element selected, you can just click on the cog that's next to the name and change the transparency or the size, as well as more element-specific options. For instance, the hotbars can be configured to be horizontal or vertical in 1, 2, or 3 lines. The status bar can be changed from displaying as a single element to split between 3, one for buffs, one for debuffs, and one for miscellaneous. The job gauge can be swapped between the more decorative version and one that just displays basic information, and so on. So with these options in mind, you now need to make a few decisions. Since people ask me specifically how I set mine up, I'm going to talk about my process of how I made the decisions I did when it comes to what is displayed and where. So the first thing I had to consider was which elements I wanted displayed. I knew I needed 3 hotbars for job actions, 1 hotbar for miscellaneous, my party list, my duty list, yada yada. But there are also other elements, like these hotbars that I want for convenience sake, but I don't want to have to see them all the time. They take up valuable screen space. Well, there's a solution, and I'm going to cover that solution very shortly. So do not exclude something that you have for convenience just because it's taking up too much space on your screen and you don't want to have to see it all the time. Next, I had to decide where I wanted to place things, and this wasn't a one-time deal. I moved things around for a few years before I found a comfortable place for them all. but there were things I took into consideration, even from the beginning. First, I wanted my screen to be aesthetically pleasing and mostly open so I can see more of the game. I mean, this is a very beautiful game, so the less clutter on my screen the better. Meaning, I wanted most things around the outside border. I also kept everything that's going to be displayed more consistently at the bottom. Then I thought about how I actually interact with this game. Like when I heal, my preferred method is to click on the player's name in the party list. I'm also right-handed, which means by default, my pointer generally rests on the right-hand side of my screen. So I knew that my party list also had to be on the right-hand side of my screen, because if it were on the left and someone needed a sudden heal, that split second it would take me to move my pointer across the screen may mean they're dead. I also wanted to cluster all the items I needed to watch during battle at the bottom middle of my screen. Things like my battle hotbars, my status bars, job gauge, parameter gauge, all that stuff. This way I can limit my eye movement and speed up my reaction time. Not only can I see everything a lot easier, but I can also watch the boss to see when they're casting, what direction they're facing. I can see any telegraphs, all the important stuff. So yeah, I definitely put a little thought into how I place things, and after a few years of experimentation, I finally got the HUD that you see now. And believe me, when I go to play other games, I generally kind of transfer this information as much as I can into those other games. When it comes to actually moving the different elements around, it's super easy. Just simply click on them and hold, and then move them where you want them to be. If you want to use the snap to grid option for a little more precision, hold down Shift on your PC or R1 on your console. And now that you have things set up where you want them to be, let's go ahead and clean this up a little. So exit out of your HUD layout and go back to the system menu and choose character configuration again. Now go back to the hotbar settings and under display, click and turn on hide unassigned slots. By default, this is going to be shut off, and each unassigned button on your hotbar is going to just be grayed out. However, if you turn this on, it's going to hide all those unused boxes and make your display much more clean. Next, you want to turn off hotbar numbers. There's no need for these that I can find, and they just add to your screen clutter. I also turn off enable hotbar cycling. This lets you cycle through your hotbars by clicking on these two buttons next to your primary hotbar, and has caused me to screw up my rotation or let people die more than once because I accidentally tap it. Since I do not use this function and it's more of a nuisance, I simply just shut it off. Now you want to move on to the sharing tab. All of these selected hotbars here will be shared between all of your jobs. And since my hotbars 1 through 3 are for job specific actions, I have hotbars 4 through 10 shared so they do not change when I change jobs. Now you can exit that menu and you have your HUD. But remember, there's all this stuff on the side that I said I don't want to look at and I don't want on my screen all the time. So I'm going to tell you how to toggle this on and off. And I've told some of my guildmates and my friends these little tricks and they were like, what? Oh my God, I had no idea you could do that. And then like a week later, I'll get this little message where they're like, holy crap, you changed my life. Thank you so much. I always like getting those messages. I like being helpful. Anyway. We all know that macros are really worthless in this game. They're horribly detrimental to use in battle. Please do not use macros in battle, and are used mostly for fluff and technical sort of things. But they're going to be a lifesaver here because you're going to be able to use them to toggle any element of your HUD on and off. And I'm going to explain to you right now how to do that. First, you want to open your HUD layout again and write down the names of all the elements you want to be able to turn off and on. Now go to the main menu, go to System, and then choose User Macros. If you're unfamiliar with macros in this game, the first thing you may notice is there's two tabs, Individual and Shared. Individual are macros that are specific to this character. Shared are macros that can be used on any character on your account, no matter what server they're on, no matter anything. So pick which one you want to make it in and just go from there. So once you choose that, you want to select a blank box and name it. And I'm just going to call this one test. Now you're going to want to give it an icon, and you can click on this icon box and choose one of the pre-made ones here. But I really don't like doing that. I find a lot of these pre-made icons fairly ugly. So instead, I'm going to customize this icon. And you can choose nearly any icon in the game for your macro icon. If you want to use an ability icon, you simply type out on the first macro line /MICON, which stands for macro icon, put a space in, and then the ability name. And let's just use raise for this example because it's short and sweet. Select enter and voila. The raise icon is now also your macro icon. If you have an ability that has 2 or more words in its name, like let's just choose my dancer standard step, you need to put them in quotations or use auto translate to make it work. If you want to use the name of an item, you can simply put the name of that item, but at the end, you also need to include the word item outside of the quotations, of course. Now, let's see what I have in my inventory here. Blue prismfish. We're going to use a blue prismfish because why not? So I'm going to type in blue prismfish. And look at that. That items icon is now my macro icon. Now for this to work, or remain working, I should say, that item needs to be in your inventory or your macro will revert back to a blank gray box. Your main or your gear inventories will work for this. If the items in your chocobo inventory, your retainer, the glamour dresser, whatever, this will not work. Now to actually create the toggle, on the next line, you want to type /HUD followed by the HUD element name you want in all one word. So let's do hotbar 7, which is my hotbar that's located down here. Now, as you can see, I can execute this macro and my hotbar 7 will toggle on and off. And you can do this for up to 15 HUD elements per macro, meaning you can change what's displayed for anything you're doing with just the click of a button. Side note with these macros, or with any macro actually, you need to only click it once. You need to let these macros fully execute before you click on them again, or it cancels itself and starts over. So if you're in the habit of clicking your button rapidly multiple times, you need to train yourself to only do single clicks, and let me show you why. So if I click on this macro multiple times, you can see that it's not fully able to execute, and what you toggle on and off will desync. To fix this, you need to go back into your HUD display and turn everything back on to reset it. So only click once and save yourself the trouble. But I'm going to take this one step further, because when we were configuring our HUD, you may remember that I told you that you can have 4 saved layouts. Well, you can also change between layouts with macros as well. So to do this, all you need to do is type out /HUD LAYOUT space and then that HUD layout number. Now you can execute this macro and voila, you can change layouts with a single click. But you want to know what? I'm going to take this even another step further. Remember how I said that some people like to have different layouts depending on what job they're playing? Yep, we're going to macro your job change to your layout change. And let me see, let's use White Mage as an example here. So to do this, you want to set the icon first. And if you want to be really fancy schmancy about it, in the first line, type out /MICON space quotation soul of the White Mage quotation space item. This will change your icon to the White Mage Soulstone, which is a great icon for these, in my opinion. And then in the next line, you're going to want to type out /GS, which stands for gear set, space, change, space, and then the gear set number. So for White Mage, that will be 19, because if you look at your gear set list, you're going to see that each one has a number associated with it, and the number for my White Mage is 19. Now you want to type in on the next line /HUDLAYOUT space and your HUD layout number. Press execute, and now you have a macro that will change your job and your HUD layout at the same time. These are so customizable, it's insane. Square Enix did a bang up job when it comes to the sheer amount of things you can do with macros. Outside of battle anyway. Again, don't use macros in battle. But let's take that another step further again. Because if you don't want to have that extra hotbar displayed on your screen with all these extra toggle commands, because I mean, you're trying to keep your screen clean, right? You can also mix in the use of keybinds. Keybinds are one of the reasons I love using keyboard mouse to game. I keybind absolutely everything I can. I just love them so much. But to do this, you first want to move that macro to a hotbar. Then you want to open your system menu and this time choose keybinds. Now go to the hotbar tab, scroll down to the hotbar that you want to use for these commands, and assign the keys by selecting the setting and then pressing the key you want to bind it to. Now, it doesn't matter if that hotbar is displayed or not, pressing that key will still execute that macro. So you can keybind anything you want to a hotbar, hide that hotbar, and still use that keybind freely. This is a really great way to clean up your screen because you can have so many commands that are just hidden. And don't forget, outside of macros, you can place emotes, mounts, minions, potions, abilities, all that stuff to a hotbar and then keybind them. And that, my friends, is how you create a super customized, minimal HUD and change it on the fly. I hope that answered some of your questions and taught you a few new tricks to make your Final Fantasy XIV experience that much more enjoyable. If you have any tricks of your own, be sure to leave them in the comments, or if you need a further explanation of something in particular, comment below or shoot me a message here or on Twitter, which is linked below, in case you want to follow me there as well, which you should. That would be really cool of you. But with that, I'm going to let you get started customizing your game. And as per the usual, it's been a hoot until next time. Have fun.